welcoming you here tonight. I know it's a small audience, but we are going to use the mics because we are filming all our launches. We've got a YouTube channel. You can spread the word. You can watch all our launches there. So we just need to plug into the whole system for the sound. So welcome to Love Books. Wonderful to have you here tonight, and thank you so much for coming. We have been so lucky to have authors from far and wide in this shop over the last 2 weeks because of the Kingsmead Book Fair and everything that's been going on in the book trade this month. And that's why we are so lucky to have Vanessa here tonight. Welcome to Love Books, Vanessa. It's really lovely to have you back again. We last had Vanessa here for her last book, Beaten But Not Broken, in 2018, which I think is a blur to all of us, actually, it seemed, with COVID in between. Yes, yeah. One of the things that I have noticed in my reading this year is that the highlights, the books I'm loving, are the books that make me laugh. I've absolutely loved David Bondiel's memoir about his family called My Family. It's absolutely crazy family, just in case you would like to read that. And the other book I've loved is Tom Eaton's Act of Murder, which is fiction and it's a crime caper, but it's laugh out loud hilarious. And I don't know if it's just a sign of the world that we're living in, but that's what I'm looking for. And The Village Indian is one of those. It fits right into this category. It's brutally honest and it's completely hilarious. And I love the way Vanessa's written it. I thought I'd just read a little bit of the sort of disclaimer at the beginning to give you a taste. Vanessa says, any resemblance to people living or dead or somewhere in between, comatose or passed out drunk or stoned, is utterly, purely, mostly, partially, perhaps quite unlikely, definitely, totally, maybe, kind of, sort of coincidental. Some names have been changed to protect the identities of the fictitious characters in this book. Any incidents, anecdotes, or gossip contained herein are also definitely, completely, and mostly made up, except, of course, for all the parts that are definitely true. And that sets the tone for the book beautifully. So before we hand over to them, I'll just tell you very little bit about Vanessa and Craig. Vanessa is an award-winning former television and radio news journalist, and she's the author of the memoir that I mentioned earlier, the best-selling Beaten But Not Broken. And she's also written a children's book called The Selfish Shongololo. And, of course, she lives in a village in the Western Cape. Chatting to her tonight, it's really lovely to have Craig Jacobs here tonight. Craig is the founder and designer of a sustainable fashion label, which I'm sure he's wearing, Fundudzi, and it's very, very natty. He's also a well-known Sunday Times columnist. He runs the back page of the Sunday Times. He's really the guy who decides who the A-listers are. And he's also a multidisciplinary media and lifestyle expert. Yeah. Craig, it's lovely to have you here tonight. Thank you for doing this. And over to the two of you.
Thank you so much, Kate. Good evening, everyone. I must admit, when I was asked to do this, I kept thinking, like, why? When I saw the title of the book, I was like, do they know I'm not Indian? And I sent Shay a message to say, by the way, you know I'm not Indian. So, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be the right person. And then I thought about this. And I thought, like, I write a social column where I go to parties and I write on people. I enter into a world and explore those people and try to unpack them a little bit and observe them and also have commentary about them, sometimes a little bit spicy or naughty, and from my perspective. And I thought about your book. And yes, the names have been changed to protect the guilty. But you are observing these wonderful characters. And yeah, so I realized there's a little bit of a commonality there. And I'm kind of being inquisitive. We're both journalists. I mean, you're automatically inquisitive and also observant. So I'd love to know, like, when was the light bulb moment when you were in the town, when you thought, oh, this could be a book?
Yeah. So we moved to the village in 2018, and it was literally like 48 hours after my book and my memoir had launched in Durban. On a Thursday night, on a Saturday morning, we were in the car and heading to this village that shall not be named. And I think, it was probably like a couple of weeks, maybe months into it. And they were all these larger-than-life characters. And I swear you could not make any of them up. I thought, okay, the village itself is beautiful. It's one of these places you would find in a book. And my initial idea was that of a murder mystery, like a Miss Marple or Hercule Poirot sort of book, because it's that kind of village setting. Firstly, I have no clue how to commit a murder. I've read enough murder books, how to even write one, how to pick a victim, how to bump the person off, how to solve the crime. And I thought, well, why actually make up anything? Because there's all these wonderful characters, and they were all just, you could not make them up, and there was all these strange things happening. And I wanted to write about it, and I kept thinking about it. And I think it was maybe 3-4 years into living into the village that I had actually spoke to Bridget about this idea of the village Indian. I'd already known the title of the book before I actually knew what was going to go into it, because I am clearly a minority, so therefore the title.
Yeah, one of two in the village.
One of two. So apparently there's a few more floating about, but I never see them. I don't know who they are. We kind of just know, that there's somebody. But for the purposes of the book, I am the village Indian, whether they like it or not.
So it was only 3 years into it when you suddenly thought one day, I
have to write about these people. I have to write about them, because this is a soap opera on steroids. Really, not even the most prolific authors could make up the stuff that goes on there. It's crazy. It's really crazy. But it's my village, so I can write about it.
I think we can unpack the village a little bit later on. But I was thinking about what you were talking about, 2018, and I came up with these two quotes. The one's from C.S. Lewis, who says, "There are better things ahead than any we leave behind." And I was thinking about your journey here, going to the village, and then one which it's probably a phrase that familiar to most of us, about Lao Tzu. I never know how to pronounce his name properly. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And the hidden meaning there is that the step isn't just forward, but it's also about away from something. And I'm very interested to know the journey going to the village, leaving behind what came before. Was that something you were thinking about? Were you leaving something intentionally? What was the calling to the village?
So when I'd started writing Beaten But Not Broken, I think, especially in my family, with my husband and I, a lot of things were going to come out. I'd obviously left broadcast journalism by that time, so I was no longer really in the media spotlight. But a lot of things were going to come out, and the Indian community is a very conservative community, especially in Durban. And I was going to be talking about something that was deeply private, very intimate, and terrible at the same time. So we were looking to leave Durban. Durban is home. It's where both our families come from. We were looking to leave, and we were looking to leave at a much later point. The book came out, and suddenly there was urgency. I don't know if that's the right word, but we had to get out. It was too small suddenly. Durban was way too small. And the thing with the book, and if I'm very honest with you, they say writing is supposed to be a cathartic thing. And maybe this was part of it being cathartic, but I had hit rock bottom with that book, to the point of where, in the days that the book was going to be released, I was feeling extremely suicidal, and I even said to my husband once, and I have an amazing family that I love very much. But I said to him, I don't want to be here anymore, because it was suddenly the enormity of what had happened that I had suddenly realized, and we just couldn't be there anymore. So we got to the village way ahead of time, and it was very fast. We were going to get there, but we got there much sooner than we had expected. So yes, some people may say we were escaping or running away, but I did what I had to do, and I think for the sake of my children, we had to kind of make a cut, a clean start. There was just too much. There was just too much baggage there. Yeah.
So I thought I had to mention that because I
Yes.
kept thinking about that, it was so unexpected. And you don't even have beds when you arrive,
Beds, no.
even though you had been talking about this for a long time. But I'm also interested because, when we embark on a journey, I was thinking, in terms of my life, like I was saying, when we were having a conversation, I was born in Durban, and then we moved to Cape Town, and we moved to Australia. And it was always about my mother wanting something more. And when you go into a new place, it's almost like you're turning over a leaf. And it's also about self-discovery of yourself and who you are, but also trying to learn how to adapt in a different place.
Very much so. So we're a mixed family, right? So that's part of the essence of the story. And we're in a village where mixed families are, quite a rarity, as am I. So it was literally going into, and I grew up in Chatsworth in Durban, which is a predominantly and historically Indian township, right? So I was going into a world, firstly, that was not the city, not the life that I was used to, not an Indian township. And yes, it was wanting more for myself and for my family, my children, my husband and I. It's a life that he was not unused to, because that is what he's grown up with. And I went in thinking, well, I'm going to stick out. And yes, I do stick out for obvious reasons. I thought I would have to fight for my place there. I wondered about the acceptance. I wondered how our family would fit into this dynamic, and what it would be like. And obviously you go in with preconceived ideas, you go in with stereotypes, you go in with your own sort of prejudices, I don't know, but you go in with all this, in your head. And I was saying, I was chatting, we had a meeting with Jacana yesterday, and I said something, and I absolutely meant every word of what I said. I went in there not expecting much, and I ended up finding my community. I ended up finding my tribe, and they look nothing like me. They do. They look nothing like me.
And importantly as well, this is a departure from the book before. The tone is different, and I'm interested. Is that the town that helped discover that, or kind of blossom this flower?
I think so. There's crazy things happening, and it's funny. And sometimes you have to keep your sense of humor about you, or you can go a bit nuts. And I thought, but there was also like the subtext of serious things and serious issues. But nobody wants things rammed down their throats, especially when we're talking race and we're talking race relationships and all that sort of thing. And I thought, well, how do I soften this? And by virtue of the fact that I am one of a handful of Indians there, and if I wrote from a very Indian perspective and using Indian lingo, Indian expressions, you can soften the edges of sometimes things that are not pleasant. And the ability to be able to see the humor, even when things are not even funny. And I always say it's one of our superpowers as South Africans. This thing we have, this ability to find humor and to laugh at ourselves and laugh at each other, even when things are like really like going on a detour, and things are not even funny. Like 50 people that have gone off for asylum or whatever. And there's a big race war happening in South Africa. And then you should have just seen the comments on social media, because it's the most hilarious, entertaining thing ever.
Yeah, we love the footsickers.
We have that as South Africans. And I absolutely love that about us. And so it was a thing of obviously, when I started writing, I could never have foreseen the asylum seekers and the 49 people and all the drama and madness that's happening now. But it completely fits into all of that, like the themes and all that sort of thing. And the ability to laugh at ourselves. We must never lose that, actually.
Actually, you say something in the book. Small towns are a magnificent and sometimes disconcerting microcosm of what happens in South Africa. So I think that's kind of like, it's almost like, but it's a place where you can't hide.
You can't.
So I wanted to ask this later on, but I want to know now, like, because the grapevine in the village, right? Yeah. Everything goes, it's light speed. So they must know about this book.
So the bookstore that's in the town next to the village has been sold out for the third time. So that alone tells you what a nosy bunch we are. We want to know the gossip. Who's that? So everyone's trying to figure that out, right? Am I in the book? And I got asked this before the book was even coming out. Am I in the book? But it was almost asked with like this hopeful anticipation. I hope I've made it into your book. And I didn't quite have the heart to say, well, I don't know. You're going to have to read it to find out. Yeah, they know it's there. It's been sold out. Apparently more books are coming in. And I think people have this sort of sense of humor or the ability not to take things too personally. Because listen, we're always gossiping about each other. We all are guilty of it, So you really can't take things personally. You can't take the book personally. If you're in it, you're in it.
So it is a bit like my column, because when I go to a function, I mean, people in Masi knows, because Masi takes all my pictures, and then we'll take pictures of some people, and they might not appear on Sunday, and then they're like, "Where's our picture?" Or like people come up to you and you like, "Hi, how you doing?" And I can see that they're hoping I'm going to mention them in the column, so I can relate completely about that. I mean, the villagers are waiting in anticipation to find out, and they've got to read.
There's a book 2 coming out, apparently.
Oh, so I think this is a good
first cut.
This is a good time for us to read an extract. We never discussed this beforehand, and I thought is it right in the beginning in your prologue? If you want to read part of that, because you're talking about a story.
Oh,
sorry.
No, that's. Is this your bag? Yeah. You can dig in it. You can dig. There's nothing illegal in it. Yeah. No drugs or anything, I promise. Is it in a... No, it's just lying like in a mess with everything else.
Actually, before we get to the book, it was something that naughty Craig, preparing to do this, because I've never done this before, I thought I had to ask you, where are the shoes from?
They're Versace, baby.
Because,
in the country.
Yeah, I have to say, because in the book you talk about when you're in Durban, you go to Gateway and you always buy shoes, and you were buying shoes when you went to the village, even though you were thinking, where am I going to wear these shoes?
Well, there's nowhere to actually wear them, So maybe.
So the shoe obsession hasn't stopped.
No, it stopped for a while. But there's some things that are just so inherently there. You can't fight it, and you shouldn't fight it. Actually.
And does the husband know about this?
Hell yeah, he's financing it.
Okay, should I help you? I've put Post-its here. So
It's just the first page.
Yeah. I mean, you can decide which part of that you want to talk about. But I mean, I just thought that first story just goes right in there and captures.
Well, it starts with gossip. It's the prologue. It's the prologue of the book. Yeah. Well, to cut a long story short, Spanner Bob says, leaning forward, slightly slurring, using his all-time favorite phrase with relish, a pause for dramatic effect and to keep his audience enthralled, but also, more importantly, to perform the elaborate gesture of picking up his wine glass and taking a languid slurp from it, before slowly and carefully moving the glass back to its spot on the table, while appearing to study it. All done very slowly, smacking his lips, savoring the taste of the deep red liquid, aware all eyes and ears around the table are on him. Listen, everyone loves a good gossip, and I'm not too ashamed to say I'm no exception. Also, my writer-journalist brain is busy clocking every minuscule detail, from the eager silence that suddenly engulfs the small space between those gathered around my table, remnants of the meal enjoyed and finished a few minutes before. I will leave it there because the gossip is quite delicious.
The gossip is.
Yes, the gossip is delicious.
That's how you just, I mean, from there, you know what you're going to get in the book. The names.
Yes.
Let's come to the names because, I mean, the village is going to be talking about the names. And I wrote down a few of them, right? Because I'd love to know the thought process about how you came up with the names. And these are just the beginning characters that you start meeting. So there's Spanner Bob, there's Charlie and Dylan, there's Adeline and Edward, there's Bubs, there's the widow, there's Cheryl Peabody, there's Mitzi Clampett, there's Prudence Potter, there's Gaia Bell. I mean, when you hear Gaia Bell, you automatically have an idea of who she is, right? There's Fran Leonard, and then there's Doyle Crookshanks.
And Doyle Crookshanks is a Crookshanks.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, when you read the characters, you already get an idea of what they might become in the book. Yeah. So how did you come up with the names?
Okay, so firstly, I'm not good at making up stuff. So that was a struggle, having to rename people, because their names are so perfectly theirs, so perfectly them. So I hate to say it, but what I did was I literally took their initials and just found the closest name that I could find, which my husband thought was extremely lazy. And he's like, that's too close. You've got to change it completely. And I was like, I actually don't have the mental capacity to, So those initials there, and there's very few that aren't, that have gone totally off, and that was because of some influence and input. But like I say, I'm terrible. I'm terrible at making up stuff. So I just kind of okay, well, her initials are GB. So what's the closest thing I can come up with, I was literally Googling names. Doyle Crookshanks was always going to be Crookshanks, by the way. Yeah.
So the initial is DC?
No.
Okay.
No. But he was always going to be a Crookshanks, that I knew. Spanner Bob... So Bob is the name that I've made up, but he does always name himself according to what he's doing. So Spanner Bob, not too long ago, worked on a fishing lodge in Zambezi. So he was Zambezi, and this was on his Facebook. So he's Zambezi, whatever his name was, and then he changed his job, and then he became Lucky so and so, and whatever. So Spanner Bob.
Do you think it's because it's a small village that people's characters become elevated? Do you think they start...
I absolutely think so. I look at all these people because remember, it's not just my personal interactions with any of them. it's also me standing on the parameters and looking at this. And it is a play, it is a soap opera, it is theatrical, and they are these larger than life characters, and that's what is so marvelous about that. It didn't take much effort on my part to have to make up stuff. Of course, you can exercise literary license and kind of like add in a thing or two or whatever. But really, I mean, it's a banquet. It's a banquet and a feast of characters and personalities and stories and storylines and dramas and politics. I was just saying, as we neared the end of my writing before I had to, when the editing process was happening, and literally had to come a point where I stopped adding because I just kept adding. There was always something to add. And there were people telling me stuff, by the way, because they knew I was writing a book. So I they'd tell me stuff. People would tell me stuff like that has to go in your book. So they knew, and I remember, it was the chairperson of our CPF. He's like, he told me something, and he says, well, that's one for your book. That's another chapter in your book. And I said, at some point I'm going to have to stop writing, because if I carry on, I'll be like a wizened old duck still writing this same manuscript, because it will carry on. So therefore, there has to be a part 2.
So you think that they've been dreaming for this moment their entire lives?
I think so. So a few years ago, we'd had major flooding in our village, right? It was catastrophic. And as a result of that, there was a major retailer that did a Christmas campaign every year, and they'd focus on a specific town, like one of these far-flung towns, and there was something remarkable happening there, a sense of community or whatever. And they picked our village because of the flood and, this community spirit and everything that happened. And so there were all these camera crew floating about in the village for like well over a month. You cannot even begin to imagine what it was like. Anybody and everybody and their dog and their grannies and whoever else were beside themselves, because the village has never seen this excitement before. Camera crews and everybody wanting to get their 2 seconds of fame, and people who had nothing, who weren't even affected by the flood, were wanting to get in on the action and that sort of thing. It was brilliant.
Gate crashes.
Yeah, and you can get away with it, So it's all that sort of stuff, It's magic. It's absolute magic.
I'm glad you brought up the 5 seconds of fame on the TV commercial, because you do something un-Indian in your part.
Darling, I'm always doing something un-Indian.
Let's talk about being Indian, because you can't miss that from the book. It's called The Village Indian, and you're looking gorgeously Indian. So I'd love to unpack that, because there is another part. It's not just the village. There's another place that you mentioned earlier that has had an indelible impact on you. I'm talking about Chatsworth. And I love how you said it's a place that needs to be breathed in. And that we are fed by the thirst and hunger of our community. So how I'm growing up in Chatsworth and being Indian, because you're fiercely proud of being Indian. I mean, I think about that again, thinking about myself and being colored. Like in colored community, we're not really that feisty, especially when I grew up. I wasn't, from a culture point of view, it wasn't really something that we really thought about. And only as I grew older, I'm starting to become more aware of where I come from and the little cultural mores and things, and discovering the joy in that. But as Indian and in Chatsworth, the community is so completely different from the village in some ways. It's similar, but it's different. I mean, the sharing of food, people chatting over the fence. what impact did that have on your life?
Yes, I am fiercely proud of being Indian, but I'll tell you why that's come about. I mean, I was one of many in Chatsworth. There was nothing unique. I was, one of thousands of brown people there. I have only not only, I have obviously being in a mixed marriage and living in a predominantly white village, have become acutely aware of who I am, and it's suddenly there are things that do hit home. So my mom's 80, and she's the last person that's ever going to speak Tamil in our family. And when she goes, that language is gone. It's gone. And it's those realizations. And that is why celebrating the Indianness in all its craziness and, its over-the-topness and all that sort of thing has become so important. I don't have much to impart to my children. And if I have to be very honest with you, I'd prefer not to indoctrinate them with anything. And my husband and I make an absolute point of that. I mean, obviously, they're very aware that their parents are extremely different. But it's not something that we enforce or talk about in our house. They're aware of it or whatever. But I want them to be South African, as am I, before they start putting tags and labels to themselves. It's very important, not just to them, but the society, the community, and the country that they are very much going to be a part of. Because sometimes I find, when we cling to this thing, whatever our identity is, and the thing with Indian culture is it is quite an emphatic thing, right? There's very prescribed things, whether you're Muslim or whether you're Hindu, even whether you're Christian. But there's things that are so fundamentally Indian, So being Muslim or being Hindu is irrelevant. But there's things as Indian people that we share, But I don't want that to become the things that are going to put divides up, because we are so fiercely protective that we become sort of closed off to who we are as South Africans. Because for me, that's the important thing. So for me, this is probably my way of saying, yes, I'm Indian, but ultimately I'm also South African first. And, that is the sort of end theme, is that South African identity. Because sometimes these things can be divisive, and I would never want it to be that. And I got to celebrate my Indianness here, and that's fine. That's fine,
I think, there was another extract that I kept about the journey, and Ain't No Flies on Us, in case you want to remember. And you talk about like Chatsworth and moving to the village. So I thought maybe that could capture a little bit about what you're talking about.
I had done my due diligence. The city and Chatsworth kept me for as long as I needed to be in them. They held me through some of the most terrible times of my life. They let me go to find my way back to them and the man I would marry. The city and Chatsworth watched me grow from child to adult. Both rejoiced in the birth of my children. Both sheltered me while I unraveled and laid myself bare on the pages of a book. The city was done with me, and Chatsworth, like any Indian mother, reluctantly accepted that she could not hold me anymore. Both are also very much like the kind of friend who I can go without seeing and know there will always be a warm welcome later, like I never left them at all. But I wasn't just leaving the city or Chatsworth of my childhood. This was a trek across provinces to leave the past where it belonged and give myself and our family the gift of a new start without the stains of memories and traumas. A place so unlike everything I had ever experienced in my life.
on that note, the Indianness does stay in the language.
Yes.
And these words, I mean, I almost thought like, I wish there was a glossary for some of them.
So we deliberately didn't.
Because, I mean, Parangi,
Parangi, yeah.
am I pronouncing it right? I don't even know.
I hope I'm pronouncing
Yes.
it right.
What is?
Remember, I've made it very clear that I really don't speak Tamil.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like words that I've heard. And you know what was really terrible? So my grandmother only spoke Tamil. Her English was basically non-existent. So when we would go to visit, she and my mum would gossip. Right? She'd sit on the bed and my mum would sit on the bed opposite and they'd be gossiping and literally like a tennis ball, my head's back and forth. And I was always like to my mother, what did she just say? Because you know it's all juicy stuff, but you just don't know what is being said, you know? And my granny was... my granny was very... There's a word I use in there and it's velakachi, right? It's a Tamil. I'm laughing because Fawzia, do you know it, right? Do you know it? You've heard it. Okay, so I couldn't speak Tamil. I used to also wear like shorts and crop tops, which my granny disapproved of. Like when I'd walk in, you could just see the look on her face, like she didn't like what I was wearing. And there were lots of Indian food that I wouldn't eat. So Velakachi in Tamil is a white woman. So my granny was convinced I was acting like a white woman because I didn't speak Tamil, I didn't eat a lot of the food, I dressed very inappropriately. So I left out the glossary, right? And I would like to think like some of the words in the context of what you read them, you'll kind of understand what it is.
You do get it.
Yeah. And if you don't...
I was going to say, Granny probably said karavul.
Karavule.
Karavule. Is it
It's
karavule? Oh,
yeah, it's
when she saw you in that outfit.
Yeah, she did. And all your Sami as well. Yeah, no, but poor Granny. You can only imagine the headache I was.
I
She
think
loved me anyway.
there's other language which was more familiar to me. Growing up in Durban, hearing my uncles talk, especially when it's the way the verbs just don't go say I said anything, or bloody cats and all. Vi down the main street. Now my uncles always said Vi everywhere. Where does this language come from?
I think can we say that it's uniquely Durban? Yeah. I think so. I think it is very uniquely Durban. And I don't know if one's been done, but there should be a dictionary with those Indian words because it really is it's very much a language. And like I said, you don't even have to be Indian. In the context of what you're hearing, you'll know what's being said. And Paula's nodding her head because she comes from Durban, yeah.
Like, what this man acting like?
what like that? You know?
My Joburg, I'm a school teacher, my Joburg learners tease the Durban Indian accent.
Yes. So it's endless source of entertainment and, the comedians are doing it and whatever. But it is very much the way we speak, I shouldn't say we all. But yeah, and all. I shouldn't say we all and all. You know what I'm saying? But it is. It's very much part of that culture. But then I think it transcends into the coloured community as well. Yeah.
Some of those words do get picked up. I wanted to... What was the other thing? I've lost my train of thought. Your process, writing... Because, there's a lot of things happening in the village. I remember when I was here last time, Lindania asked her, who wrote Buried in My Chest, was talking about how she writes in the stillness of the morning. So when do you write?
When the kids have gone to school. So that was pretty much it, really, because otherwise it's impossible to do anything when the kids are around. So we wait till they go to school, have a shower at 9:00 promptly. I sit in front of the computer, sometimes sit there for I don't even know how long, and nothing's happening. And then the TV's on, so I'll be watching there. Maybe it's Kardashians that's on. or the dogs start barking, so let me peep into the door and see who's walking past. So I am a procrastinator. My attention span is very limited, easily distracted. There is no orthodox sort of thing, and maybe that might come across, in my writing. It's just completely unorthodox. But I'll tell you when I do have my best ideas, and that is at 2, 3 in the morning. But then I'm too lazy.
What, with a glass of wine or?
At 2, 3 in the morning?
Well, I'm just asking.
No, I'm not that bad. I wait till at least 12
Parties
o'clock.
in the village go on for a long time. So
Yeah. No. By that time, I'm in bed. And then we wait for a suitable hour, like 12 o'clock. And, it's like kind of decent time to have a drink. So 2, 3 in the morning is like kind of when those best thoughts come to you. But then it's so cold that you can't actually get out of bed and go do anything. So you hope the thought still stays there when you wake up. Yeah.
okay, so you've got like a note, not a note.
I don't. I have to be honest with you. I don't. I wish I was one of those people that had discipline. I don't have discipline. I honestly, I don't. And sometimes it's a struggle, because I do. Something gets my attention, or I'm busy fighting on Twitter, tweeting Israel and whoever else, fighting the good fight, and I do get sidetracked, But that's, I think, the beautiful thing about writing is that it's such a different thing for everybody. I don't think there's a manual to it, and that's why stories are so personal, whether they're fiction or non-fiction. That element, of an author comes out. So no, I mean, I don't stick to anything. Just write and hope for the best.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say one thing about the book. That was that train of thought when we're talking about Indianness in the language. And I mean, the refreshing thing for me about this book is I did a chat GPT of like all the books that have been written about the Indian experience. And there's been a lot of amazing ones in South Africa. But no book for me has really captured the liveliness of the language and the culture in a way that's contemporary and funny, because Indian culture does have that humor. So what's next?
So there's The Village Indian 2. And apparently I've been given, is it a subtitle? That's what I asked yesterday. The little, shall I say that? Am I allowed to say it? So we were having a little soiree on our stoep. If you read, you'll find that's like the common occurrence. Everybody get together on somebody's stoep and you drink too much and start talking nonsense. So we were discussing the book, and one of my friends said to me, maybe the subtitle should be The Whitening.
Oh, wow.
Yes. It's happening. It's happening.
Well, bringing up that your husband is a presence in the book.
He is, yeah.
But you only mention his actual name around page 67. I don't know if that was because he's the white husband.
So I'll tell you one of the important things I wanted to do here. Race and racism and all those things that go with it have become such triggering things, and sometimes very weaponized. And it's okay, The first thing we see about each other when we see each other is we see each other. Do you know what I'm saying? Why is that a bad thing? It's not. I see you. I absolutely see you, and you should see me. And to say you don't see my Indianness, because we all want to be very PC. Look, we all are trying very desperately to be PC. But we are who we are. We wear our skin. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with saying I'm colored. There's nothing wrong with saying I'm Indian or I'm white. Why does it have to be such a terrible thing? Celebrate it. Own it. Do you know? So So that was a deliberate thing, like my white husband, you know. I didn't actually realize that I waited till page 67.
He has to wait
say
till
his
page
name.
67 to see his name in there, whereas Bob the Spanner,
Bob, yeah.
Spanner, yeah, because it's not Bob the Spanner, it's Spanner Bob. Spanner Bob appears on page 1 of the prologue.
Yes. No, I think it was a deliberate thing because I want to take away that thing that's associated with race, you know, that thing of sensitivity, like we can't say it, you know. Yes, it's okay. It's okay. I see you, you know, and it's okay. And that's also been one of the profound sort of realizations for me, you know. Like I said, you know, we make a point of not talking about race in our home, and I'm going to share the story with you because we're very careful with our children. You know, we didn't want that kind of talk or language in our house. People are people. And my youngest must have been about 5 years old. It's not. I don't think it's in the book. And she said to me, she asked, you know, how come you're brown and daddy's, she doesn't call him white, she calls him peach. How come daddy's peach, right? So I said, well, that's just who we are. How does a brown person love a peach person? How does a peach person love a brown person? This is a 5-year-old child that we've never had these conversations with. She's seen me, she's seen her father. Yes. She's seen that, you know. So if a 5-year-old child is seeing it, why is we as adults so uncomfortable with this?
Yeah, it's not a shocking thing unless you make it shocking.
Exactly.
So
and it's not a bad thing. It only becomes a terrible thing when we use it to stereotype and like put people into boxes, use it to kind of castigate an entire group of people based on your experience with one person. Because here's one of the things that I found out, right? I'd had a bad experience, and my automatic sort of diagnosis of the whole thing was, this has to be racism, okay? Because my experience was with a white person, so it has to be racism. And this is what writing kind of, my second draft, I must point out, my second draft. The first one was terrible, but we don't talk about that. This is what it forced me to do, was this actually racism, or was this somebody that just behaves badly? And they behave badly to other white people too, actually. So is it racism, or is it somebody just being an asshole, you know? And I make a distinction about that. Racism and assholery. And we must be very careful to be able to distinguish between the two, because it is the automatic assumption when we have an experience of somebody from a different race group that it has to be racist, whether it's an Indian and a black person, or a colored and an Indian person, or whatever. The person has to be racist. But actually, you'll be surprised to find out they are like that with kind of everybody.
yeah, I think the way you say it in the book is racists are arsehole, but not all arseholes are racist.
Yes.
And if you were to say one thing that the village taught you, is it that? Or is there something else that like...
I think for me, the ultimate and the most profound and beautiful thing, and I will come back to that, is I came there expecting and anticipating, I don't know, all sorts of things. And I found my community. I really did. And I'm absolutely sincere about that. Because the madness aside, I have seen the absolute best of humanity. I have seen people rally together. I have seen people building, fixing, mending, and healing the destruction of things that they had nothing to do with. You know, when I'm talking about race relations, because there is two sides to our village. You know, the other half is predominantly colored and black. And there is the historic legacy of that village. And I see this every day. I see white people putting up their hands. I see white people coming to the front. I see white people fixing. I see white people healing. That is not what I expected. You know, maybe I had my prejudices too, and I owned up to them. But I have seen the spirit of South Africans. And for me, that was a profoundly beautiful revelation of not just community, because this community is reflective of the country. And somewhere in all of the noise of race and racism, the good people get drowned out. And what I have learned is that there are far more good people that are doing things to make this place better every single day, across the racial divide, across the religious divide. But we don't hear about them. And I wanted to celebrate them too. And I hope I did. I hope I did.
Well, I was going to say, sold. We're all semigrating to the village.
There's no place
We all want
left.
to meet
There's no place
Mitzi
left.
Clampett
full.
and Spanner Bob and avoid Doyle Crookshanks.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
Not a question, but a comment. I really like what you said about how you couldn't make this
Should-
up, you know.
Oh,
It's fine. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Like you couldn't make this up about these people, and for me that's an amazing thing, you know. That I always think about that one quote where, yes, truth is stranger than fiction, because fiction has to be believable. You know, as a writer, as writers, we have to make sure that it's going to be believed by the readers. But actually, in real life, things are just so bizarre sometimes.
Absolutely.
You know. So, like I said, it's not really a question, but and also just about your process. I think that you know it has to be organic. You know, if you're writing as honestly and as authentically as you want to, it has to be organic. And whether it's at 2:00 or whether it's in the morning. And I mean, I admire those writers who have that discipline and have that particular. I mean, I met somebody who said once she stops her writing in the middle of a chapter, in the middle of a sentence for the day, and then the next day, so that she knows exactly where she's going to start again. And I'm like, I'm so in awe of you. You know, you are just amazing. But yeah, so well done to you, and well
Thank
done
you
on the
very
book.
much.
Really.
Rashida is an author herself. I did your book launch with you in Durban.
Durban, yes.
Please just remind me.
Mirror Cracked.
Mirror Cracked, and it was a beautiful book. And what I particularly loved about that, as a Muslim woman, she wrote some pretty saucy things there.
It's a controversial book.
It would be, you know, with, you know, if you look at the conservativeness of the Indian community, and then you add to that, well, there's also the element of being Muslim as well. And that's what I loved about you, because you were it was very saucy.
Hence the mirror got cracked.
Yeah.
No one else with questions? Yes?
The man with the beautiful face.
So you actually called me exquisite at first.
Okay, exquisite, yes. We'll stick to that.
So as someone also is no stranger to controversy in our conversations, and someone who is also a critical scholar of race, which is very central to the work that I do, when we started the conversation, you said you spoke about having these difficult conversations, but then also trying to soften some things, right? And of course, I mean that's your approach and process, and that's valid. But I think about that, and I think about the moment that we are living in right now, right? Which is a moment that is very prone to distortion and untruth, right? I think about Palestine and Israel. I think about and so yes, we make jokes about the 49-foot seekers, and it is all very funny. But it does belie a more disturbing truth, right, about race relations, and more broadly, the question of humanity, right? And so my view about it is that if we are going to talk about these things, we do have a responsibility to tell the truth, and the truth is ugly. And so I just I'd like you to expand more on what that means when you talk about softening it. And then perhaps just to hear your perspective on what I'm saying about the fact that even though it is difficult and it is ugly, I do believe that those of us who have the pen in hand have a responsibility to tell the truth. And when that makes people uncomfortable, I mean, this is a good thing, in my view, because discomfort is what encourages change.
I absolutely hear you. And so when I say soften, I wanted to bring in an element of humor. Because remember something, that these were my experiences. And I had to do a lot of introspection because I did go in with a lot of prejudice, right? To have to live in a predominantly white community, what it was going to be like being one of a handful of Indians or whatever. And softening the edges doesn't necessarily mean downplaying the seriousness of it. Never, never, ever, ever. But sometimes I think the way you deliver something can have the same profound impact, if not greater, than if I had to shove it down your throat. That's just for me. You know, and it's never ever to underestimate, to undermine, because we've got 99 problems in South Africa. We really do. But the one problem that we don't have is, in those moments, we do know how to come together. You know, like, take, for example, exactly this issue of the genocide and Trump and the asylum seekers. It has brought people from black, white, Indian, and colored together. I mean, there are people sitting here who could up and leave. They have the means to up and go, and they could have done so whenever. They didn't need Trump to offer them asylum. They've chosen to stay. We've all chosen to stay. Counts for something, right? We've chosen to stay. This country's worth fighting for. I think we're all worth fighting for. And sometimes, you know, the unpleasant stuff, I don't know, I just feel, I feel weighted down by it. And for me, maybe that was my personal way of having to deal with some of the unpleasant things that happen, is to be able to laugh it off and add that Indian kind of twist to it. Because we have a very strange way of looking at things and saying things, you know, the Indian people. There's a great sort of expression that we have: what must do. What must do. What must do. It is what it is. What must do, you know? Yeah, I hear you, Jamil, and I would never want to downplay anything, because I absolutely get it. But I think for me, that was my coping sort of mechanism. Yeah.
Well, I do want to say, in terms of Vanessa, in the book, you're very clear about the incidents that happened,
Yeah.
and you stood your ground even when you were ostracized. So that does come abundantly across, the point you were making about honesty and respect. Just the way in which it's done makes it accessible, and hopefully those people, including Mr. Crookshanks, will figure out what he did wrong by reading it in a way that makes it approachable. Yeah. Because I think sometimes when we do go headstrong in an attack, people don't hear us.
You're not receiving it.
Yeah.
You're not receiving it.
Yeah.
You know, and there's also this thing of getting like all sanctimonious and preachy, and maybe I do at some points do that. You know, I know I'm guilty of it, and I will absolutely 100% own that. But yeah, it's. I wanted people to receive something, and you know, so had to weigh up: do I shove it down your throat and be hard about it, or do I deliver it kindly? And I think in doing that, I did something for myself. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be angry. You know, I really am. I mean, I'm heavily involved in community work there. and I see what's happening, and I see the difference it makes, and I see how people working together. So am I part of that? Am I going to be a part of that? Or am I going to be here on the sidelines, just, attack mode all the time? And I will call them out when they need to be. It's happened. It's happened to the point of where it's an interesting incident, but you're going to have to read the book, but I will share this much with you. It was a school principal that was accused of being racist and became a very public thing. And a political party got involved. So it was two disgruntled white mothers, who pulled their children out of school, had a run-in with the principal, went to the political party, said this woman's a racist, and they need to do something about it. So they had organized a march to the school. I know the principal. I have dealt with her on several occasions. And I also knew what was behind this particular incident, because there were things that were said to me personally. So when I see this post on Facebook, on this political party's page, I was furious, because I knew exactly where it was coming from and I knew what it was about. And it was a matter of settling scores. It was vindictive, it was vicious, and once you get branded a racist, you cannot come back from that. It really had nothing to do with me, but it also had everything to do with me. And I read it, and I sat with it for a few minutes, and then I said, well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to say something. And I commented, and then the comments kept going back and forth, and they were quite, you would think when it came to racism that the input or opinion of a brown person would count for something, right? It didn't, it mattered not. It mattered not.
And you weren't the only brown person commenting.
I was not.
There was a lot
Eventually,
of
other parents started coming out, including parents of mixed, of adopted black children. Obviously, nobody wanted to do anything at first, because I suppose people were scared. As soon as you see somebody's being accused of racism, just take a step back, because if you're going to comment on it, then, well, you probably want to, And it got wild, and it was going to be a big protest outside of the school, but before that, what had happened was her car was torched. So it got very ugly. And I even said to them, I said, we're brown parents. Surely what we have to say should matter. So it was an issue of how racism was totally weaponized. And it literally took a community of black parents, of brown parents, of colored parents, that stood up and took up this battle. Hello, ladies. Welcome. So that flips that story on the narrative. It flips that narrative, So no, I'd like to think that when it does happen, and it doesn't matter who it happens to, that we do, not just myself, but we all have the courage to say something when you're confronted with it. My thing is always, who do I wish I'd had on my side at my lowest, darkest times? And I will always strive to be that for whoever.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's something that we all really.
Okay.
I would actually just like to say something. I spoke to Vanessa in 2023. She won an award as part of my organisation. And you came from a very low point. And I'm so proud of what you've done, because I'm very much into empowering women to do things. But you cannot do that without having some humour. You have to actually sometimes laugh at that really bad situations. And I think that's what makes it work for you.
It is a coping mechanism.
It is.
And it is a way of processing horrible things,
But I'm absolutely in awe of what you've done and from where you've come, and I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. Lynette teaches people how to use guns.
Thank you, everyone.
She teaches girls how to use guns. No, she does, really.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. What an absolutely enchanting conversation. Thank you so much. It was wonderful listening to you. I hope lots of people are going to watch it on our YouTube channel. And please buy the book. It's for sale up there. Vanessa, if you don't mind staying there for signing. Yeah, do you want to say something?
Yes, I do. I just want to acknowledge the entire team at Jacana. Kelly, Bridget, Maggie, Lara, Lucille is not here, Shay, Fatima. Have I missed anybody? Have I missed any? Listen, guys, if my head wasn't screwed on, Karabo, yes, beautiful Karabo. Thank you very much. And there's a lot of other people that aren't here. The entire team at Jacana. Writing a book is one thing, but bringing it to the shelf requires an entire team. A village. The Jacana Media Village. The love, the gentleness, the care, everything that you guys put into it. I mean, I said, and I made brief mention of the fact that the first draft was hideous, to say the least. Terrible, terrible. Hey, no, it was. Guys, I can accept that it was. So I had to rewrite. But you saw the potential in it. And I got gentle encouragement to write again. And it was a game changer. It really was a game changer for me, because that would not have happened. It really would not have. And it would not have happened with any of you. And you guys are a remarkable team, and I'm very privileged to have my second book with Jacana. And if I play my cards right, maybe a third. And thank you to the fabulousness that is Craig Jacobs. I really could not have asked for a better person to be next to me. So when I got the email to say Craig Jacobs is going to be steering the conversation, I quickly went and Googled. I thought, this is fabulous. This man likes clothes. This is just great.
At least you found the right Craig Jacobs.
Yeah.
Some that are dead.
Yes.
Some are in prison.
No, you are just fabulous. You were totally the perfect fit for this book and this conversation, and I appreciate you.
New shoes as well.
Oh my God! But it's you. Yeah. Yes.
Your husband says, don't believe anything. These are his words. Don't believe any story about me.
Well, actually read the book and then you. And yes, thank you to all of you that made the time and the effort to be here. I am very grateful and I'm very humbled, and I never take any of these things for granted. We are beautiful people as South Africans. We really are, and there is so much. There's so much sadness in the world right now. And humanity, we've never needed it more than we need it now. And if I had to leave you with anything, and if that book leaves you with anything, it's humanity. It's doing good where you can, how you can, as best as you can, making somebody else smile or breathe a little bit easier. Because God knows this place can be crazy. You just sometimes want to stop the world and jump off. So all the love to all of you, and thank you very much.